What's going on there, folks? Good evening. It's the Earthmaster here on this Wednesday night, March 22nd, 2023. It is about 10:07 p.m. here along the west coast, and looks like the latest earthquake shows a 1.9 here in California. A little bit of activity ramping up here over the last 24 hours across the state of California, including some movement right smack dab on the San Andreas Fault here. We did have a 3.4 come in here just off Highway 25. That was, looks like it was followed up by a little aftershock here, 1.5. But general seismic activity elevated along the state of California. We got some movement up here against the Diablo Range as well, near the Pinnacles region. Last earthquake in the, last hour. Also down south here, getting some movement north of the Garlock Fault shear zone as well. There's that 1.9 near the Abodfish area. Southern California, a little bit of activity up along the San Jacinto Fault zone. Now this is the northern segment, the San Bernardino section. This fault system does have many different little fracture zones across the southern portion of the state. And they stretch well down here, very close to the Mexicali border area, and very close to the plate boundary. It runs parallel with the San Andreas Fault. And it's been a little while since we've seen a little swarm up here, very close to the southern segment. I believe they say if it's going to go, the San Andreas Fault, that is, it'll start up here around the San Bernardino mountain range. So continue to watch that for some possible movement here into the Southern California area. Up into the Washington region, got a little swarming kicking off here earlier this afternoon and evening. 11 earthquakes around the Leavenworth area. 2.6 appears to be the largest. And now this earthquake activity bouncing up and down between roughly 2 to 6 kilometers or so below the surface. Not really associated with any volcanoes up here. Got Mount Howard, which is not a volcano, but a beautiful peak. The closest volcano is probably going to be the Mount Glacier area, I believe. Up north, Glacier Peak. So a ways away from any specific volcano, but either way, a little bit of interesting activity kicking up here today into the Washington region, the Cascades, around Mount Rainier. A couple small earthquakes throughout the morning and afternoon time period. Very small movement, not a whole lot popping off there. Let's give a quick glance of the I was just looking at Mount Howard. There it is right there. Beautiful peak, by the way, from the Wikipedia article. Okay, tremor map here tonight along the Cascadia. 237 epicenters of tremor, again in the Northern California, Southern Oregon, the southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone. Not really seeing too much earthquake activity out here right now, but with the continued tremor, we'll watch for some possible further movement out here along the Blanco fracture zone and other areas here around Northern California. And as always, I say it a lot, when we have uptick and elevated tremor activity, there's always that higher possibility of triggering and adding further strain, just enough to tip it over that melting point, so to speak, to see a larger earthquake out here along the Cascadia megathrust. I wasn't here back in 1700. I don't think they did research on tremor. Tremor is actually a fairly new monitoring system when it comes to the slow slip tremor downstream into any subduction zone. So I would have liked to seen what it was like prior to that 1700 9.0 out here. It'd be some valuable information, but I guess we'll know, right? When the next one does take place out here, we'll have all this tremor research to hopefully predict the next Cascadia earthquake. All right, back down to Southern California real quick. I kind of skipped over this area down here. This is the Imperial Fault. At the very end, well, it's off of the Brawley seismic zone, runs into the Imperial Fault, kind of the an extensional plate boundary here between the North and South North and the Pacific Plate. And this is pretty active here into the Imperial region with about 7 earthquakes clustered up there. Nothing big. Looks like just a couple twos and some ones. But a noticeable uptick here across the southern portion of the state. So, again, we'll continue to watch that area for some possible movement. The rest of the country looks pretty quiet. Not a whole lot going on there, folks, at all. Puerto Rico area got one earthquake in the last hour. It looks like a 2.8. About 28 kilometers deep, and some typical movement there across the southwestern edge of Puerto Rico. Let me go over here to the Earthquake 3D globe and see what we got for movement along the Middle America Trench. Looks like some 3s and 4s from this morning. No major swarms. South America, of course, we had that big earthquake there. 6.5 coming into the Argentina area early this morning. That was a pretty deep earthquake. We did see a little bit of adjustment around the region upstream that we were looking for. Nothing big yet. But we do have some smaller quakes upstream here, a little bit more shallower, as noted on the globe, with the rings very close to the surface. Also a 4.8 out here into the fracture zone, the Chile Rise area. Valdivia, is that right? Fracture zone, couple different fracture zones out here. You can see the oceanic crust there, creating new land, so to speak, a divergent boundary. And if anything, that should add further stress here along the Peru-Chile Trench. We'll continue to watch that. But we've got a 5.1 coming up, or we had earlier this evening, and also a 4.7. So things kind of kicking up down here regionally across the South America area. Up into the Alaska region, looks very typical. Not a whole lot of unusual activity. Still seeing some movement here across the volcanoes of the Tanaga. And the, Tacawanga volcano looks fairly quiet, but a handful of quakes still around the Tanaga volcano. And again, we'll continue to watch that swarm. It's been kind of persistent. Let's get a total tally here and see what we got over the last 30 days for earthquake activity. Kind of curious to see what this one's going to be like. Oh, yeah. Check that number out. 2,258 earthquakes. The largest, probably not that big, 4.4 it looks like. Couple 4s, quite a few 4s and some 3s. But heck, that's a lot of earthquake activity here over the last 30 days. It's been calming down, though, over the last, I'd say, about 4 or 5 days. Things have kind of mellowed out and leveled out for the most part. But goodness, that was a lot of earthquake activity ramping up. No eruption yet. Again, still continue to monitor that, see how it plays out. A little bit of activity this morning around the Japan area. Also up here into our major watch zone, a 4.3, relatively shallow at 10 kilometers here at the northern end of the Kuril Kamchatka Trench. Around the Philippines area, a couple earthquakes throughout the day today, 5.6 and a 4.2. Let's take a look here at the area. Looks like I did see a slight uptick here in 5s across the area of the Papua New Guinea region and the Java Trench. See if USGS is reporting some of that. Yep, it looks like they are. At a 5.1 into the Indonesia area this afternoon, and 5.7 here around Papua New Guinea. 131 kilometers deep here, just outside the Bismarck Sea region. So a little bit of uptick in elevated movement there across the Indonesia area. Kermadec Trench, one earthquake from this morning, it looks like, a 5.5, and I don't think... doesn't look like we've seen any major uptick here across the area. Eventually, this is going to start showing some further movement. If anything, I think with all the deeper activity we've seen here over the past week, I think we should see some larger surface rupture before we start seeing that deeper movement again, but we'll continue to watch that. New Zealand area showing a couple 3s into the area, so let me see what we got here for the GeoNet servers. And I'll go to the all magnitudes here. 9 minutes ago, 1.5, couple smaller quakes. There's a 4.0 an hour ago, it looks like, at the southern end of the Kermadec Trench. Pretty shallow, 12 kilometers deep. There's a 3.3, Bay of Plenty area, 77 kilometers deep. Not really seeing any major swarming out here around our typical swarm area. As we've been watching there around the Mount Tarawera area. But let's go ahead and check out the earthquake drums here across the region of New Zealand and see what we got popping out here. Looks like some of those 3s and that 4-pointer showing up here within the last couple hours. Mainly showing up around North Island, New Zealand. South area looks, kind of looks like they had that one down here earlier, about 10 or 12 hours ago or so. Nothing big, little earthquake down there. But for the swarming area, there's a volcanic drum that I'm monitoring here. This station called the Mount Tarawera area. Hopefully that is correct. I haven't really seen any negative comments on that, so I guess that's the correct pronunciation. It looks as though the swarm has tapered off here over the last 8 hours. But we'll continue to watch that. These swarms come and go, as I think we all know. That was pretty good, intense earthquake swarm up there in the North Island, New Zealand here over the past couple weeks. All right, let's see what else we have here. USGS doesn't want to work, at least on that window. Maybe are we live still? Yes, we are. What is it with going back to the USGS? Nothing's going on. That's a little odd. Yellowstone's working. I just can't access the USGS now. Now, that's a little weird. You guys see that? Nothing. Oh, there we go. That took way longer than normal. That's a little on the fishy side. All right, let's see what else we have here across the area. Not going to complain too much, right? In Australia, down under here, 4.9. That's somewhat of a, goodness, that's somewhat of a larger quake here in this area. Let's see what we got going on out here. 9 kilometers deep. Looks like it was felt. A few folks did report feeling this earthquake across some of the region there of South Australia. Historical data, I don't believe we've seen too much earthquake activity out here. Maybe a little handful, according to the key chart over here. Looks like there's been a couple 4.5s in the region, but overall, seismically, not really a seismically active area. But that's pretty close to a 5-pointer. Goodness. All right, definitely some mountain ranges and some other fault systems that run through there, well away from the main plate boundaries. But again, you got the Great Dividing Range out here along the eastern coast of Australia. A lot of plate dynamics still outworks there in the Australia region. All right, move on here while I still have my voice. 5.9, Tajikistan, take your pick. Earlier this afternoon, almost a 6-pointer there. 5.6 kilometers deep. That is a shallow earthquake. And of course, this comes after the movement that we've seen here over the past 7 days. We did see that larger earthquake down south here. Very deep earthquake, 187 kilometers deep for that 6.5. And it looks as though that pressure gradient here heading up to the northwest, that does tend to kind of hard to see. Well, it's up here in this area. Kind of hard to see it. There's other dynamics at play here compared to the major plate boundaries around this region. But the India plate, that's way down here. This earthquake struck underneath these mountains way down there. But again, a lot of pressure gradients go well inland in this area. And that's kind of what we're seeing here today up around the Tajikistan area. 5.1 out here around the Iran area. That one coming in early this morning. I still think it's still pretty active out here. One area that has not seen any movement across the Himalayas south here to about the northern end of the Java Trench. Got to watch this area. I know there's definitely quite a bit of stress out there, but it's been absent, very absent. So a couple major areas to watch: the Kuril Kamchatka and this area here, northern end of the Java Trench, northward into the Myanmar area. 1.1 it looks like coming over here. Kind of hard to tell exactly where that's at right now. Slovenia. 1 kilometer deep. Look, all these ones here. Goodness. All right. Nothing big, but latest earthquake up there on the map. Pretty good swarm of movement here across the Mediterranean. Quite a few smaller quakes, including, well, let's see, where's that 4.9 at? Let's see exactly where that's at. Albania region, 14 kilometers deep. That's definitely being followed up here by many, many aftershocks in the area. Turkey still seeing quite a bit of activity with some movement in between these two localized locations. Atlantic Ocean looks pretty quiet for now. Not a whole lot popping off there. Let's see what the USGS is reporting around that area. Not a whole lot. California lighten up, though. Look at that. Definitely lighten up. Getting some movement here on the southern end, too, of the San Jacinto fault zone. Remember, all this pressure leaning up. It's leaning up against this plate boundary here. And then we definitely know that this one's wound about as tight as you can get. You know, it may take, who knows what. It could be tonight, could be tomorrow, could be in the next 20 years or so, but eventually it's going to happen. This is, the San Andreas Fault. A lot of us know about it. The southern end has not seen any major rupture here in well over 300 years. All right, let's see what else we got. I was going to check out the tremor map here tonight, but for the volcanoes up here around the Glacier Peak, let's see here if some of those earthquakes are showing up up there in Washington at this specific volcano. I can't remember if this one works or not. Let's see here. Oh, it does. There's a little bit of activity showing up here. Let's see what the previous day looks like. 2.6 near Glacier Peak. That showed up rather nicely. That's going to be one of those earthquakes right up here in this mix of quakes. Let's see here. 2.6 right there. Of course, Glacier Peak sits up here to the north about 20 miles or so, so definitely a 2.6 will show up pretty nicely in that area. These are some type of, I don't know what, looks like it goes off every 18 hours or so, 24 hours or so, but nothing of interest. And it looks like the activity here today on the UTC day, the new day, looks about the same. Not really seeing a whole lot of activity. There's that other two, some smaller quakes there in the mix as well. So continue to watch that with that little earthquake swarm up there. Again, I don't think it's in relation to anything at this volcano. Just some plate dynamics in force up there. Fault systems, that is. All right, let's see what else we have here. Space weather activity. Well, there's that monster of a coronal hole, number 86. Kind of got a nice little feature going on there. The latest imagery here shows that perfectly squared up with Earth here. I'm going to watch here around the 24th, 25th time frame for possibly G2 storming conditions. Right now, looks like they've elevated here a day before and a day after, just in case, right? Got to get one of these days right. But it looks like for now, the main time zone is going to be on the 24th, UTC time of the 24th. So between the 06 and 6:12 time frame. We'll cover this a little bit later tomorrow when it gets a little bit closer, unless it arrives early. But again, G2 storm, 85% chance at higher latitudes of seeing auroras, 45% at the mid-latitude. So a decent chance, pending that we get a good glancing blow from that coronal hole opening. And the latest magnetic structure here of the sunspots. Well, goodness, I keep saying that. I sound like a broken record, right? It's like, well, not a whole lot going on again. These sunspots have been rather odd. You know, they'll start acting up and misbehaving out of view, but as soon as they rotate here into the Earth view, they behave and they just die away. And that's kind of what it looks like is going on here with these regional sunspots. There's not a whole lot of activity. I still think maybe here in the center there might be a little bit of mixing there. As massive as these are, they're stable. They're not complex whatsoever. Another sunspot out here on the southeastern limb. This one here has kind of died away, and can't really say much for that one either. Although, looking at the solar X-ray chart here, pretty much in agreement with what I just stated. Only very, very minimal C flare activity at best. Right now they're calling for 95% chance for a C flare, M flare at 10, 1% for the X flare. Highly unlikely that we'll even see an M flare on that. But all right, so we'll continue to watch that, see how it plays out on the 24th UTC time. Again, we'll cover that a little bit better tomorrow. We'll take a look at the outlook there, see if it's changed. Right now, the aurora forecast very minimal. Everything looks fairly stable in terms of the higher latitude storming. Not a whole lot going on up there. All right, quick glance here at the weather forecast for the West Coast. You guys see that tornado in Los Angeles? What is it? The day after tomorrow? Isn't that movie about severe weather? You know, like in New York and Southern California. Pretty impressive. I mean, it's somewhat of a smaller tornado. Of course, tornadoes are not all that common out here in California. I've caught a couple here throughout my weather watching observations, but Los Angeles, goodness, it's pretty crazy. It tore off a roof or two down there and spun things up into the air. All right, so that system is causing all this chaos out here and bringing rain. Heading out, and it looks like we have another light system here to our north on Thursday, late Thursday, tomorrow into Friday. This is mainly going to be hitting the Pacific Northwest with some relatively decent snowfall and rain along the coast range there. Northern California might get a little bit here, nothing though too noteworthy to mention there. And then our next system looks as though that's going to be early next week. The weekend looks dry for the most part. Cold, but dry. Notice these blue lines here. The ISO lines are looking pretty... that's some cold temperatures coming in there. In fact, we're underneath a frost advisory here beginning Friday morning, lasting until Sunday. So, colder this weekend. Big storm coming in. Looks like Monday into Tuesday, bringing with it some impressive rainfall once again. Here in California, Northern California, the Bay Area and South, a lot of snow up here into the mountains as well. That low pressure kind of dropping here along the Northern California coastline. And then heads down south a little bit, brings some more rainfall into Southern California. After that, around April 1st, Fool's Day, looks like a little bit of rain on the 1st or 2nd or so. Right now, I'm not seeing any major impacts into the first week of April. In fact, we got a high pressure system parked out here off the California coast that could put an end to our winter. I don't know if I want to say I'm done with the rain or not. I enjoy the rain and the winter, so I don't know. I don't want it to go away yet. I do want to check the symbols out here, see how far this goes into the future. We'll check out the dynamics. See, look at that high pressure here. This is what gives us quite a bit of dry weather sometimes in the wintertime. Our drought conditions out here is responsible for high pressures parked over here along the west coast. So it looks like it's starting to be scooted over here by this massive low pressure system up here into Russia. So let's see what happens here. Into the first week of, still got some colder troughs here and potential along the west coast. First week of April, that high pressure system is way over there. You better stay over there. And then after that, hard to say. It's a ways out, but it looks like we may have a little bit of ridging kicking up here just off into the Pacific Northwest coast here. But continue to watch it and see how it plays out. For the rest of the country there, looks like a couple cold spells and whatnot coming up towards the end of March. So, could be an interesting spring out here. The later we get here in the year, here in California, our weather turns a little bit crazy sometimes. So, I do enjoy the thunderstorms. All right. Have a good one, folks. We're just about to normal as far as my, a little head cold that I had, but I'm almost normal now. Take care. We'll catch you guys back here tomorrow. Stay safe, everyone.